I saw a Tom Scott video that I thought would be at least slightly interesting to react to, so let's do that. 10 years ago, I predicted 2022. Did I get it right?
In 2012, I told a story about the future. I don't like looking back at things I've made in the past, but in the last couple of weeks I've had some emails saying,
the world was supposed
Tom,
to end.
10 years ago,
And he
you tried
predicted
to predict
something
2022,
about
or
10
at least
years
some of the technology in the
later.
online world of 2022. You should look back and see if you were right. So I've come back to the same place that I gave that talk. Back in summer 2012, this was a warm, friendly, temporary festival site with a load of people on it. And now it's a cold and run-down, deserted bit of scrub next to a motorway. But it's the same place. I did originally try to film this without having looked back at the talk to get my actual genuine reaction. And it was a terrible video. I'm bad at improvising, and I thought of a dozen more things I want to say right afterwards. So now I've had some time to think. Let's go back 10 years, see what I got right, see what I got wrong, and see if I can predict 10 years from now. I've got a story for you. It's set in a future. Not necessarily the future, I'm not saying this is what will happen. I think that's the first time I ever used that phrase. It's a get out of jail free card, a way to hedge my bets and say, I'm probably going to be wrong. I use it a lot when I write
Lamb shading.
April
I know what it's
2022, 10 years time. First person we're going to meet there is Jason Stewart. He's the MP for Tooting and Stratton. He is the Minister for Social Development. He's considered kind of a hot shot among his party after winning his seat in the 2020 general election, a very hard-fought contest. All the political guesses there were completely wrong, but when has anyone ever been able to predict politics? Also, the faces in this talk weren't originally blurred. I've used YouTube's tools to go back and blur them in the original as well, because there is a big difference between asking a friend, hey, can I borrow your headshot for this talk I've just given to a few people, and can I show that to however many people will watch this new video? I've got to be fair there. This is the 2022 iPhone. Looks about the same. Laws of physics dictate you still need a battery brick. That's a hit. It's a very easy hit. The borders of phone screens are going to get smaller. It's not exactly a difficult prediction to make. And by sheer luck, I used a black background on the phone, so you can't see if there's a notch or not at the top. One subtle thing I got right there as well, Apple did change their font. Back in 2012, they were using Helvetica. I picked the wrong one to change to. They use a custom sans serif, but I did predict the UI was going to change a bit. But what has changed is the mobile network speed. 5G now blankets the country in 100 megabit internet access, and the data caps are a thing of the past. Again, a fairly easy hit. 4G was just being rolled out in 2012, so taking a guess at 5G in 10 years.
4G was in 2012.
Actually, it was a bit pessimistic. There are parts of the UK where you can get gigabit access on your phone now. Data caps are still a thing on some contracts, but as far as I know, they're not something most people have to think too much about. As you watch this, you've got to remember that in 2012, we were almost exactly halfway through the transition to smartphones. Only about 50% of people had moved from calls and texts only to what we call a modern phone today. Suddenly, half the population was carrying a camera all the time. Half the population could easily cheat on pub quizzes. Things were changing, and they were changing fast, but we weren't in the smartphone era. Social change
to cheat on pub quizzes.
2012 Me is about to get the fundamental idea of the talk, and it's based on one of the big ideas that was going round on technical people at the time, life logging, the quantified self, the plausible idea that we were going to store all our memories online soon. It was mainstream enough that Black Mirror's entire history review had aired just a few months earlier, and now everyone was getting a computer with internet access in their pocket. 2012 was before Google Glass, before the first narrative clip, all of which came and went very quickly. It turns out that so far, people just don't seem to like the idea of remembering everything and storing that data forever with corporations.
Isn't there some metaverse
thing? I didn't know. No one knew if it was a warning that was going to be needed. Last year, Apple reused a trademark and introduced iLife. It's quite similar to your history on Microsoft Nokia phones or Droid Locker on Android. They're all descendants of the accountability systems that have been used for police officers and care workers for years now. So many misses in there. Apple have since switched to flat design. All the Android services have been rebranded as Google, and Microsoft Nokia phones. And the idea of private contractor body-worn cameras and that all sorts of people all over the public and private sectors would wear them every day as part of their work, it just hasn't come completely wrong. With iLife, the phone is always recording audio and sending it and your location to a cloud server. The descendants of Siri then generate a transcript of it. If you talk to someone else with iLife, they give you a text chat log. It's not perfect, but it's close enough. Big miss. Companies just haven't developed that. People, I think, don't want that. But back then, Siri was a few months old. Amazon's Alexa would come out a couple of years later. I'm sure any of those companies could have developed that product. It's entirely possible these days. It's just that we went a different way. And if you have the new Apple headset, it's got a couple of cameras embedded in it, which are always recording video when they're connected. That's uploaded, analysed, and stabilised by the same systems. The cable, incidentally, still gets tangled in knots every time you put it in your bag. That's another big mess. Although, to be fair to early in the, I still think wireless headphones are a terrible idea. I can't understand why anyone uses them. They're expensive, they need recharging, the battery degrades over time, they need a carrying case, they're easy to lose. Bluetooth is still really dodgy 10 years later. I still use wired headsets. Now, in hindsight, wired camera buds would probably have drained too much battery too quickly, but I still think there's a path that could have got us there by now. Which brings us back to Jason Stewart.
But
Jason's a
why-
member of Cheshire Boys, the site for his old alumni of his public school. Runs on Disco, a fairly popular community framework that unfortunately has some fairly major security flaws. That's one of the biggest misses in this whole talk, and it's subtle. It took me a few times watching this to realise just how badly I got that wrong. A community for school alumni wouldn't be a website or forum these days. It wouldn't be independently hosted. There are still some places online like that, yes, but depending on demographics, that would almost certainly be a Facebook group or a WhatsApp thread or a Slack or Discord server. It would be on some
probably a
centralised
Discord server.
service, not a private web server with off-the-shelf code. That whole business model, that way of operating, was dying at the time, and I had not noticed. I'm skipping over some of the talk here. Basically, that Member of Parliament's password got leaked. Its password is Stewart9, that's the same password he uses everywhere, and someone goes, hey, let's log into his iCloud. Why is any of that on desktop? 2012 was the start of the transition to mobile first, and I just didn't see it coming. All those screenshots should be vertical on a phone. I'm not imagining people coming home and checking this on their home computer instead of getting notifications and using an app on their device. A couple of years later, that would be obvious. Everything would start to be designed
the
mobile
iCloud
first,
is supposed to be on
in
the
2012,
laptop,
after I'd spent more than a decade of writing websites on and for desktop computers, I just missed that entirely. That transition was just starting, and I hadn't spotted it. First thing they see is Apple's handy is this view feature. Jason Stewart can be seen in a few frames of this walk by in Shoreditch. He wasn't recording, but his phone had his location and facial recognition did the rest, and it didn't take too much effort to find out what he was doing there.
Right.
A few minutes later, this poison pen letter arrives in every single political editor and blogger's inbox in the country. The Sun eventually runs with it first, after all blogs have made it public knowledge. Blogging. Blogs were still a big thing in the public consciousness in 2012, and I did not see their decline coming. I
Surely
think
it would just be a
mostly
news
replaced
article.
by Twitter. Should I have known? Was it obvious? It seems clear in hindsight that the blogosphere's days were numbered, but I missed it. About 1 year after that talk, Google would switch off Google Reader, forever gaining a reputation as a company that shuts down old products instead of maintaining them, and it was all downhill from there. He decides he's going to go on the offence. He gets up in Parliament and says that our private lives should be private and that we must investigate these hackers. And he convinces the Met to investigate, which they do, by filing a request with Apple for any life logs that mention Jason Stewart in the hours and minutes before the leak. And Apple agrees because that argument got settled years ago after Blackpool. You can tell something about what a culture is worried about, or maybe what a particular author is worried about, by reading their speculative fiction. I just finished The Brief History of the Dead by Kevin Krugmeyer, and there are references in there to terrorist warning beacons that everyone's got used to and just ignores. And as I read that, I thought, this is a post-9/11 book. And it is, it's from 2006. And this talk in 2012, still very much in the consciousness of people working online, that we were one media-friendly terrorist attack away from losing what was left of our privacy rights. Your lifelog will get pulled and searched through by the police. It's not like you've got anything to hide, right? Maybe we still are. It's just that, as far as I can tell from what I read, science fiction in the 2020s is more worried about democratic backsliding, misinformation, and climate apocalypse.
Yeah.
So there's one question left. What about 10 years from now? What about 2032? I'm not immersed in web development and technology anymore. I don't code very often. I work on video now. So what can I predict? Well, here's the guess. Not the future, just a future. I think short-form video is going to be YouTube, what Twitter did to blogs. People will still be making long-form video content. It will still get linked to and watched, but short-form is so much simpler that there will be so much more of it. A tweet takes 10 seconds to write, requires no proofreading or punctuation, and can be amplified to the world in minutes. A blog post takes minutes or hours to write, needs spell checking and formatting, and
YouTube
takes
is
time
most
to be
probably
discovered.
will never die though.
It's not a perfect analogy, but I have a sinking feeling that short-form video is going to win
any
just
media
through sheer
process
weight
would be
of
pretty
numbers.
much.
The ability for almost anyone to compete on the same easy, low-effort, low-attention span playing field. But there's no money in it. There's no money in Twitter, just the ability to promote other stuff. There is still money in long-form writing through commissions or fan subscriptions on Patreon or other platforms. In the same way, I don't think short-form video is going to kill YouTube. After all, YouTube didn't kill television, and television didn't kill radio, but there's a transition happening, just as there was 10 years ago. If you want a prediction for 2032, it's that the boom times for this platform, for YouTube, will be over. There's one problem with that, though. YouTube is centralised. Blogs couldn't disappear because everyone hosted their own, in loads of different places, often for a monthly fee. But YouTube, well, we'll have to see if in 10 years' time, Google decide to shut down this whole product as well.
I'd be pretty surprised, to be honest. Because like no other form of like internet media has reached as far as YouTube has. But yeah, that was a pretty good video.